Swain. So definitely good as always. Michael Swain, he is the executive director of Freedom of SA in, well, South Africa. So good morning, Michael. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Great to have you on the show. I'm in Johannesburg, but otherwise all is well.
Oh, awesome. Well, hopefully the weather is good where you're at.
Yes, all wonderful. Got a very busy day ahead.
Oh, awesome. Well, Michael, let's just get into it then this morning. This morning it's quite a serious topic, talking all about criminal law, sexual offences and related matter, and the amendment bill. So let's just get into it. What position is 4SA's taking on this specific bill?
Well, this obviously is a very serious issue, but it isn't strictly a religious freedom issue. But many members of our constituency, as I'm sure you can imagine, like the Christian church in particular, and Christians generally, are very concerned about what is happening with this bill. This is the complete decriminalization of prostitution. And so what we've decided to do is to just put together some position on it so that people who want to get engaged, and we really encourage that you do, by the way, because you literally have until Tuesday the 31st to make submissions on what your views might be to help obviously influence the outcome of this proposed law. This is a proposed law. It hasn't happened yet, so we have a chance to comment.
Wow. So can you tell us in a nutshell what this bill is all about?
Well, if this bill is passed in its current form, the selling and buying of sexual services by adults become legal activities.
No
In
way.
other words, prostitution is completely legalized, and all related activities like soliciting, advertising sexual services, pimping, brothel keeping, and living from the earnings of prostitution also becomes legal. And people who have criminal records for being involved in prostitution and its related activities, these records will be expunged. They'll basically be cleared out of the criminal system. They will no longer be criminals and they won't have a criminal record. And all pending prostitution cases will be withdrawn. So this is basically just completely legalizing all forms of prostitution, obviously with the exception of minors, but nevertheless, it is very, very serious.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very serious situation. And no wonder this is why Michael is here this morning, just to, tell you about how serious this matter is and that tomorrow is the cutoff day to get to oppose the bill. So, has there been any previous legal action or court judgments on the area of prostitution, Michael? And is this a law in keeping, is there a law in keeping these judgments?
Well, yes, there has been a landmark case in the Constitutional Court, and that case was known as the State versus Jordan. And it confirmed that criminalizing prostitution is not unconstitutional. And one of the major reasons that the Constitutional Court gave for that is because the act of prostitution deeply infringes the dignity of those who are obviously prostituted. And again, we find it quite remarkable that the goal is to decriminalize prostitution because the Constitution is clear that laws that are passed and are in force, i.e., laws against prostitution, should only be changed on the basis of sound public policy reasons. In other words, there's been research, there's been good reason for why these should be decriminalized. And we note with concern that there's a growing body of scientific research that shows that proposed full decriminalization actually makes the whole area of prostitution and all the ills associated with it even worse.
That is crazy. So the bill proposes to full decriminalize prostitution. In this is keeping with the framework of South African Constitution.
Well, no, it's not. Not at all, in fact. And again, another remarkable thing is this bill is issued by the Department of Justice. They introduced this bill. And it has literally ignored the findings of a recommendation made by the South African Law Reform Commission. Now, the Law Reform Commission is there specifically to explore issues, to come up with recommended potential changes to the law. And the Department of Justice actually commissioned them to look into this to see what they should or should not do to change the law. And they produced a report on adult prostitution in 2015. And to quote one conclusion from it, the Commission has concluded that changing the legislative framework could create an extremely dangerous cultural shift juxtaposed against the high numbers of sexual crimes already committed against women. It ends women would be considered even more expendable than at present. So again, no reason in law or even in rationale, at least as far as the South African Law Reform Commission is concerned, why this particular situation should be even being considered. Why are we considering decriminalising prostitution? There is no seemingly valid reason.
Well, if you just joined the conversation, we are chatting to Michael Swain, who is the Executive Director of Freedom of South Africa, and talking about the Draft Criminal Law Sexual Offence and Related Matters Amendment Bill, which you only have time to make your, well, just to say what you'd like to say, how you feel about this bill, whether you would like it to go ahead or not. And the deadline is tomorrow, the 31st of Jan. So, Michael, what should people or organizations who are concerned about this prostitution bill do to make sure that their opinions are heard in this process?
Well, I think one of the things to remember very firmly in front of mind is that prostitution, whatever we may think of it, but think about the prostituted persons who are often the most socioeconomically marginalized and exploited women. It literally is a system which sexually exploits the most vulnerable women. And of course, in our context in South Africa, where government has already been very strong against gender-based violence, this is probably one of the most heinous forms of gender-based violence. And so I think it's important that people do understand and hold government to account. And also to remember, of course, that there are other alternatives to complete decriminalization. Some countries have, for example, decriminalized the actual prostitutes themselves. In other words, they're the ones being exploited, so they're not the ones who are actually criminalized. It's those who are exploiting them who are. But you can go to our website to answer your question briefly, and you will find on the front page a link. You can click on an image, go through to the Dear SA website. We use that often to engage with government because your submissions then go straight to them, and make your submission. Use some of the reasons perhaps given in this interview. And there is also on the website an article that we've written which gives also information that you can use and consider when you make your submissions. But please do engage. It's so important that we make our voices heard. 21st of January, that's tomorrow. End of business tomorrow. That's when it closes. So this is your opportunity.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Michael Swain. As always, very informative. And once again, make your voice heard. Go on to Freedom of Religions. Go to www.4sa.org.za. Go and click on, there is a link, there is a Dear SA page, but you can actually make your voice heard and go and do that. Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you very much. Always great to be on the show.